From an insurance perspective, what do homeowners not get insured that they should? Is it homeowners being unaware of coverage needs or being a bit on the cheap side? The answer to this question is both. Sometimes people will choose to get too high a deductible because it saves them $100 a year, not realizing that means they're going to pay an extra $5,000 on a claim. That falls into the too cheap side of things. For stuff that people don't understand and don't know, I harp on it all the time. Replacement cost roof coverage. It's like absolutely essential. But the other thing too is if you're going through, you go to any of the direct carriers, your Progressive, your Liberty Mutual, your Geico and stuff, and go through their process on the website, it's going to ask you some questions and you're probably going to breeze right by them. And stuff that falls into that is things like collectibles, things like, do you have more than just like a personal computer and a TV? There are sublimits in your policy as standard for an ISO policy for like how many computers you have. There's only $5,000 of electronics coverage or $10,000. There's built-in coverage that limits for jewelry. Very common for an engagement ring to exceed that limit and stuff. And so, if you're talking to an insurance agent, it's important that they ask you about that stuff.
How about like coins, like collectible coins?
Coins, stamps, guns, cards, jewelry, furs, basically anything that you can think of that people will have a collection of.
Yep.
Action figures.
Yeah.
A lot of carriers will have a sublimit for toys, unopened toys.
Yeah.
So, far be it for me to judge. I have a couple of little army guys that I was building before the show right over there. So by no means is an insurance agent going to be like, that's not worth collecting. We shouldn't schedule that. If you have something that it's like, oh, that's my thing. Fine art, obviously, is a key example of this. But it could also just be like you go to the state fair and you buy like regular art, but you have a lot of it.
Sure.
Rather than, oh, yes, I have the Monet from the old family. Like it doesn't have to be something like that. Because the sublimits on this stuff is normally like $2,500, $3,000, $5,000, depends on what it is.
Interesting.
But it's real easy to get past that number if you have more than like one thing in that category.
No.
Musical instruments, that's the one that I didn't mention, and that one's really common. If you've got one musical instrument that's not that valuable, you're probably fine. You've got your Epiphone or a standard non-collectible Gibson. But if you have like 3 or 4 guitars and your house burns down, they're going to cut you a check for like $3,500 and go, good luck. There's your limit for musical instruments.
So let's say you got guitars, you got $15,000 worth of musical equipment. Your standard policy only covers $3,500 of that. What's it cost to bump that up to like $15,000 so you got coverage on all of it?
Like $10 or $15 a year.
Okay.
Generally speaking, scheduled items, particularly if you blanket schedule them, very cheap. And the nice thing about that stuff too, if you're scheduling like an engagement ring, you can specifically schedule it, which means that you have it appraised. You and the insurance company come to an agreement about its value if it's lost or stolen or destroyed. But also, that's not going to be subject to your household deductible. So your deductible on your homeowner's policy might be $1,000, $2,000. And if a gem falls out of your ring, that's going to be well under the deductible to get that replaced and reset in there. But if it's a scheduled item, oftentimes there's no deductible on that or something like a $50 deductible. So it makes it so it's worthwhile having specific coverage for those things because it's like, oh, yeah, I dropped my guitar and the headstock on it broke and I need to get it repaired and it's $600 and I don't want to pay that out of pocket. You can do that on a claim for that. And as a scheduled item thing, generally that won't impact your rates.
What about like a piano?
A piano is going to need to be specifically covered.
It is too.
Yeah.
Okay. Folks,
in my opinion, I mean, this comes down to your personal choice, right? If the piano was $600, you got it on Craigslist or whatever, and you just paid the moving costs, maybe you don't worry about it.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense, folks.